Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about this Hollow Knight Silksong illustration that I did. Silksong is got to be my favorite game, I think. Hollow Knight was my favorite game ever since I played it in 2020, and I feel like Silksong is just like the perfect successor to that game. Everything is just Team Cherry just improved. Like, I think every aspect of the game. I don't have any complaints with the combat or the difficulty or the storytelling or the exploration. I feel like it's just, I don't know, it's a masterpiece, really. In Act 3 of Silksong, you really got to see how the lore from the first game connected to the second game. And I had a lot of like really like profound moments, I guess, where I just like things just clicked and you could see how they were drawing on so much that they built in the first game. And I thought it was super cool how that didn't really develop until you were in Act 3. In that same vein, the Act 3 ending, Sister of the Void, or true ending, was what I based this illustration off because it was really where I felt you got that like perfect connection of the two games where everything that happened in the first game was tied in with the whole story of the second game. So without further ado, let's jump into the time lapse. All right, so before I jump into the time lapse, I wanted to show you my reference images real quick. So the main reference was these few screenshots here of the ending cutscene, but I also referenced Blanka Walski and Dark Dog, who are both on Twitter. Their painting style is just I'm in love with the shapes that they use, especially Blanka Walski, how he or she or they, I don't know, how they incorporate colors that you wouldn't expect to see in the medium, like the void. They have a lot of like lighter yellows but also blues, and so I wanted to try and incorporate that into my painting when I was doing the night shade as well as Hornet's like exoskeleton. And I think I the top left reference I especially drew on like the background effect. You'll see how I use that in the center of my Sister of the Void illustration. I also use the reference this Hornet's kind of figure to kind of get an idea of how I wanted to paint the character. So with these paintings, I really like to start with just blocking out these shapes. And I do this in maybe like a sixth of my canvas. It's not taking up much space at all. The reason I do that is just so I can get an overall idea of what the scene's going to look like. And doing it at such a small scale limits how much detail I can put into it because my brush only gets so small. So just on a single layer, blocking in color, shapes, etc. You can see here I started with the night's shade because I wanted it to have a lot of foreground elements and fill most of the background really with his like swirling void tendrils. And then I went back and forth whether I wanted Hornet to be holding Lace, like when she's first using her big jump as you leave Lost Lace's arena, or if I should have Lace floating off down into the corner, like in the cutscene. And I ended up, after blocking in Lace in the corner and having the pin and the nail for Hornet and Lace kind of falling back behind them, I really thought that conveyed the scene with the kind of accuracy that I wanted to, but it gave this like really significant I feel like it kind of puts the weight of the situation into the scene. Like their Hornet and Lace are at the cusp of survival, and the knight saves them at the last second. And having like seeing that they're kind of helplessly floating there, hoped would convey that, and I feel like it does. So for this illustration, I did a line art after I did the shape block in, which I don't always do, but I wanted to have a better idea or a better base to start painting with so that I didn't have to interpret it so much. It was more, I knew where I was going to block in my colors, because I find in my own painting style, if I work from just the rough paint, then what usually happens is I do a lot of back and forth with cutting shapes and then repainting over them till I get them to look exactly how I want to. Where I find it a lot quicker in my personal workflow to draw the shapes in with line and then use the lasso tool to color fill them. And then I have my shapes kind of exactly where I want them. And of course, there's some tweaking that goes on before I'm like perfectly satisfied with them for the final result. But sometimes I do just use blocked in shapes and no line. It, I think, depends on the complexity of the illustration for me. I actually wasn't even sure if I was going to do a full painting, a full render with this, which is why you see me here experimenting with different hatching patterns. I thought about maybe just doing a line only. I had seen a few really nice like pen and ink drawings that had some really cool hashing textures on my Pinterest, and so I was just screwing around with that for a little bit. But I ended up deciding against that and just going ahead and doing a full illustration. I don't always do lineless illustrations. That's why you see me here blocking in the darker lines, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to leave the line art in and just have more emphasis on those parts. Now, after I kind of was satisfied with where my line art was at, it was just blocking in shapes. And I had to readjust my painting style to be more like Blankowalski, who I kind of wanted to replicate how they did their shadows and reflections in this painting. So it took me quite a while to paint Hornet. Like her cloak and her head, I wanted to use some pink tones in the bottom of her head as if the light was reflecting off of her cloak. And the main light source here being the flower that you get in the Act 3 from the quest, that's like disintegrating apart as you're floating through the abyss. I really liked in the one reference where it's the knight and the Hollow Knight, how the Void Heart floated there and had like a really cool like circular pattern around it. So I kind of replicated that here in this illustration as well. Doing Hornet's figure, I wanted to keep it sleek and still kind of insect-like. Referencing Dark Dog's illustration of Hornet in the red flower was really helpful to kind of get an idea of how humanoid I wanted to make Hornet look. Pretty much just kind of replicating the void tones that Blankowalski does in for Hornet's body, having like small blue highlights as well as dark grays. And actually, one of the things that I don't do often is going all the way to black. And then after I was satisfied with Hornet's rendering, I moved on to lace, which went a lot quicker, excuse me, because I had a better idea of how to make the shadow shapes. I also decided to give lace like the residual void drippings from when she was in the when you fought her as Lost Lace. Throughout that boss fight, you whenever she was staggered, the void would like recede from her body a little bit and you could see white lace underneath, and I really liked that kind of duality of the black and white. So I wanted to get some elements of that and just kind of show how lace is uh, she's not like present. You know, she's unconscious, and Hornet is losing her grip. Her flower is disintegrating in the abyss, and she's about to get swallowed. And I just wanted to try and capture that urgency. And I think that incorporating the void dripping off of lace kind of helped to do that. After I was satisfied with Lace's rendering, which was quite simple, simpler than Hornet's, I decided not to try and push any crazy reflections or anything on Lace, just simply doing her white and then taking that to kind of bluer tones, because I was painting the abyss with more blues than like desaturated grays. I think it gives you a lot of style. You know, it makes your piece look stylistic to incorporate color where color isn't in a reference or isn't in nature. I think a lot of master painters use colors that you don't see. They exaggerate colors that you would never think are there. So, based on what I saw in especially Blanka Walski's paintings, I wanted to try and do those same kind of pushing the colors. You can see how I'm doing that here in the Knight's Void Tendrils. There's a lot of blues and purples going all throughout the tendrils, mixed in with blacks and grays. And I just kind of chunked different areas in a swirling pattern and then went off of that for using my highlights. Like the highlights define kind of sub shapes within the tendrils, and it gives it a very unique look, almost like a twisting vine or something. You can see I kind of put in a very subtle, like liquid kind of flinging up around the tendrils that kind of fades into the background. That I was referencing Dark Dog's illustration where the Pure Vessel and the Knight are over the abyss from the first game, and he had like the void kind of lapping up at the Knight, and I thought that looked super cool, so I wanted to incorporate that very liquid quality of the void around the Knight's tendrils. And once I was happy with the overall rendering, I went in with my curves, which I love to use once I like to pick colors, render it, and then adjust the colors once I'm done rendering. So I just kind of push the gamma a little bit, pushing my lights and darks, and then little tweaks to the hue and saturation. I actually, for this piece, took a paper texture and set that to an overlay layer just to add a little more depth to the illustration, a little noise to give it a little more visual interest. And I decided to write the name of the ending in script. This is actually the first of a multi-part series where I'm going to do the endings for Silksong or some key boss fights or moments, just whatever scenes I took screenshots of that I thought were really interesting. But yeah, the Sister of the Void ending. I think this was probably the coolest ending between the first and second game. I when I watched the ending, I had managed to avoid the Silksong spoilers until I figured everything out. It took me, I think, almost 70 hours to get the 100% completion, and I was stumped for a while on some of the hidden rooms. Some of those, Team Cherry was not screwing around with those hidden rooms. Some of them were like, I can't even believe you were meant to find them. But yeah, if you haven't played it, go play Silksong. It's an awesome game, and I'm sorry for any spoilers for those of you who are still playing it, but I feel like it was far enough into its release that I needn't make a warning for spoilers. All right, thank you so much for watching. I love you all. Please take care.